Alright, today we're going to be solving quadratic equations by graphing. The objective for today is to be able to solve them by graphing and to also estimate the solutions of quadratic equations by graphing. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the first thing that I want you to understand is that our solutions are also called the x-intercepts, the roots, and the zeros. So I could say find the solutions. I could say find the x-intercepts, find the roots, or I could even say find the zeros, and that all means the same thing. The answers would all be the same. Okay, so this right here is very important. You need to know this vocabulary. That roots just means that they're the x-intercepts. The zeros are the x-intercepts, and the solutions are the x-intercepts. All right, now, right here we've got three different types of solutions. You can have no solution, you can have one solution, or you can have two solutions. Nothing more than that though. Okay, whenever you have no solution, that is whenever your parabola is above the x-axis and it's going up, or it could be below the x-axis and going down. That's whenever you get no solution. One solution is whenever the vertex is sitting on the x-axis. It could either go up or the vertex is still on that x-axis. It could also go down. That's whenever you have just one solution, because the parabola only hits that x-axis one time. Two solutions would be whenever you've got a parabola going up and it hits the parabola in it hits the x-axis in two spots, looking like that. Or it could also go down and it's hitting that x-axis in two spots. So those are our different types of solutions. No solution, one solution, and two solutions. Forgot that S there. Alright, so now let's go ahead and look at example 1. They want us to solve by graphing. Our first step is to make sure it's equal to 0. Okay, step 1, set it equal to 0. Alright, step 2, you need to do the opposite of B over 2A. So since it's already set equal to 0, I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite of B over 2A. So B here is negative 2. The opposite of that is positive 2 over 2 times 1. So now we do the math there and we get 2 over 2, which equals 1. And then the third step is to make an XY table. That 1 is going to go right in the middle. Then above it is 0, negative 1. Below it is 2 and 3. So our third step is make XY table. Alright, so now we complete our XY table. So I know the easy number to plug in is 0. That's going to give me negative 8. It always gives you your C value. So whenever I plug in 2, that's going to give me negative 8. Okay, so now let's go ahead and plug in 1. So I'm going to do 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. So that gives me 1 minus 2 minus 8, and that gives me a positive, that gives me a negative 9. And then Let's plug in 3. Okay, so 9 minus 6 gives me 3. 3 minus 8 gives me -5. Okay, so whenever we plot these points, I've got -1, -5, 0, -8. We'll say that's all the way down there. 1, -9, still even further. And then 3, -5. Connect the points. And there's our parabola. But let's look here. What is wrong with this? We need to know where the x-intercepts are. Now, this parabola, will it ever intersect the x-axis? And the answer to that is yes, it will. We just need to keep going. So what I need to do here is I need to extend this and put 4. We need to keep going and now plug in 4. So I've got 4 squared minus 2 times 4 minus 8. So it gives me 16 minus 8 minus 8, and that gives us the 0 that we're looking for. So if this one is 0, that means if I went up the other way and did -2, that would also give me 0. So -2 is going to be 0, and the 4 is going to give me 0. And this will extend up like that, and then also right here. So understand that whenever you solve this, you might need more than 5 points. You might need less, you might need more. Okay, so on this one, we actually needed more. Okay, so step 3 was to make the XY table. Step 4 is to graph. Okay, step 5 would be find the x-intercepts. Because remember, the x-intercepts are your solutions. So right here, our solutions are -2 and 4. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example 2. All right, so remember, our first step is to set it equal to 0. So we need to add 9 to both sides to set this equal to 0. And that gives us x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. All right, so then our next step is to do the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of -6 is 6 over 2 times 1, and that gives us 3. So now we're going to do our XY table. 3 is going to go in the middle. We've got 2, 1, and then below it would be 4 and 5. So now let's go ahead and plug in those points, those numbers, to get our answers or our y values. So first, 1 squared minus 6 times 1 plus 9. That gives us 1 minus 6 plus 9, and that gives us 4. So that means 5 is going to give us 4. Let's go ahead and plug in 2. 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 9. That gives us 4 minus 12 plus 9, and that gives us 1. And now let's plug in 3. 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 9. That gives us 9 minus 18 plus 9, and that gives us 0. So now we go ahead and plot those points. 1, 4, 2, 1, 3, 0, 4, 1, and then 5, 4. So we're looking for the x-intercepts, and on this one we only have 1, so our one solution is 3. All right, let's go ahead and try another example. Example 3. Remember that we set it equal to 0. Well, this one already is, so we're going to go ahead and start by doing the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of -3 is 3 over 2 times 2, and that gives us 3 over 4. Or we could say that that is 0.75. So now let's go ahead and do our xy. So we've got our 0.75 there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go up 0.75, and that's going to give me 1.5, and then go down 0.75, and that gives me 0. Okay, and then we are going to go, let's see, what else could we do? Go down 1, -1, and go up 1. That's going to give me 2.5. Okay, so now let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and plug in 0. That's going to give me my c value, and that gives me 5. So I know whenever I plug in the 1.5, that's also going to give me 5. Now let's go ahead and plug in the 0.75. So it's going to be 2 times 0.75 squared minus 3 times 0.75 plus 5. So this would be okay to get out your calculator. Make sure you're doing the exponent first, 0.75 squared. And you should get 0.5625. Then take that and multiply it by 2. And you get 1.125. Then minus 3 times 0.75. That gives us 2.25. And then add the 5. So now we're going to plug all that into our calculator. 1.125 minus 2.25 plus 5. And that gives us 3.875. Don't get scared about these decimals. Okay, now let's go ahead and plug in the, I would prefer to do -1. So 2 times -1 squared minus 3 times -1 plus 5. So -1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 gives us 2. -3 times -1 gives us a +3. And then plus 5. That's going to give us 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 5 gives us 10. Okay, so now let's go ahead and plot these points. -1, 10. Well, that's going to be way up here. 0, 5. 0.75, which is right before the 1. And then up 3.8. That's probably going to be right about there. Don't need to get it exact, though. 1.5. It gives us 5. And then the other one is 2.5. That gives us all the way up to 10. So now remember, we're looking for our solutions. Our solutions are, where does this parabola cross the x-axis? And it doesn't. Will it ever? No. So that's why this one is no solution. So you can write it like this, the empty braces, or a 0 with a line through it. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example 4. Solve by graphing, and we're going to estimate the roots to the nearest tenth. Okay, so our first step is to set it equal to 0. It already is, so let's do the opposite of b over 2a. So that gives us -6 over 2 times 1, which gives us -3. Let's go ahead and do that xy table. Put the -3 in there, And then above that would be -4, -5, and below it will give us -2, -1. All right, let's go ahead and try the -3. When you're plugging in, make sure with a negative you're putting parentheses around it. So that gives us 9 minus 18 plus 6, and that gives us -3. All right, let's plug in let's do -2. -2 squared plus 6 times -2 plus 6. So that gives us 4 minus 12 plus 6. And that gives us -2. And now let's plug in -1. So it gives us 1 minus 6 plus 6. And that gives us 1. So remember, we're trying to get this to equal the y to be 0. Well, let's go ahead and plot these points. -5, 1, -4, 2. I'm sorry, -4, -2. -3, -3. -2, -2. And -1, 1. So, does this cross the x-axis? And it does. It crosses it here and right in here. So now what we need to do is we need to estimate what that's going to be. All right, notice that it is closer to the -1, and it's closer to the -5. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to estimate some numbers. So we could try, let's try -1.2. And we're trying to get as close to 0 as possible. -2 squared plus 6 times -1.2 plus 6. Okay, so this can all be in your calculator. So right now I'm doing the -1.2 squared, and I get the 1.44 minus, and then 6 times -1.2. That gives us -7.2 plus 6, and then type that in, 1.44 minus 7.2 plus 6. And that gives us 0.24. Okay, let's try and see if we can get closer by doing -1.3. So now we're plugging in -1.3. Square it first, that gives you 1.69. Type all that into your calculator. And that gives us -0.11. So which number are we closer to getting to 0? The -1.2 or the -1.3? You should see that this one is closer. Okay, so that's going to be one of our solutions, -1.3. So now we've got to figure out what this other one's going to be. Well, if that's 3, or I'm sorry, 0.3 away from the -1, then the other one needs to be 0.3 away from -5. But notice which way it's going. It's going this way. So we have to take that number and take it away. So that would be a -4.7. Okay, so there would be your solutions. I know this one is tricky, and I will show you there will be an easier way of doing this next week. So if you've got any questions, please let me know.